Brilliant. Okay, so as a couple more people join, I'll kick off because we are recording the event. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Network September meeting. It's great to have you all with us today, and I hope you had a lovely summer. The focus of today's session is going to be looking at impact in innovation, what it is and how we know when we've achieved it. To help us learn a little bit more about impact in innovative projects, we're joined by two organisations who work in the social innovation space, that is Rethink Ireland and Innovate communities. But before we hear from those two organisations, there are two quick announcements that we want to make. So I'm joined by my colleague Chris Kiernan, who manages the Public Service Innovation Fund and who many of you will already know. And myself and Chris are delighted to share more information on this year's Public Service Innovation Week. So we have a short presentation deck, which we will also share with you after the session today. So just as we get that deck up on the screen, I just want to remind everybody that there is a chat function that you can use to ask any questions or share any thoughts or suggestions, and we will put them to the panelists at the end of the session. And please remember that we are recording this session and we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel and website, so you'll be able to share it with your colleagues and watch it back whenever you want. So let me just share this presentation that we have. Give me 1 second. Should be able to see it. Great. Can you see that, Chris? Yeah? Perfect. Okay, so like I said, we are delighted to be sharing more information today on National Public Service Innovation Week 2022. So this year, Public Service Innovation Week will take place from October the 24th to the 28th, and it's an opportunity to celebrate and showcase innovation across the public service. So throughout the week, there's opportunities to share learnings and best practice, to engage in thought leadership, and really important to identify opportunities to collaborate and work together with other public services to solve pressing public sector challenges and deliver world-class public services. And as well as that, it is an opportunity to meet and network with your colleagues from across the public service. So as always, we ask our public bodies to help us with Innovation Week and host their own events, which is their opportunity to kind of celebrate and showcase innovation and identify those opportunities to collaborate with other bodies. So this year, our Public Service Innovation Conference will be kicking us off on Monday, the 24th of October. And this year, we're heading down to Cork to have our Innovation Conference, and we'll be having that in Cork City Hall. This year, we will be joined by Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, Michael McGrath. We'll also be joined by Anne Sheehan, who is the General Manager of Microsoft Ireland, and our MC will be Anya Kerr, who is the co-founder and COO of Kinzen. So there will be a chance to stream the conference online, and following today's session, we'll email a link for you to register your interest in attending the conference online, and you'll receive a link to do that in the coming weeks. The theme of the conference this year is to champion innovation and transformation in the Irish public service, and some of the sessions at the conference will be focusing on citizen-centric innovation, innovating for sustainability, the impact of technology on innovation, and unlocking innovation in public bodies. So we do hope that you can join us, and feel free to share the link to the conference to your colleagues, and we look forward to you joining us on the day. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now, who's going to chat a little bit more about the week itself and some of the supports that we can offer.
Thanks very much, Jade. So, as Jade said, the theme for the week is championing innovation and transformation in the public sector. So again, what we're looking at during Innovation Week is to run a series of events, both nationally and by ourselves, to promote, to showcase, and to get the message of the innovative work that your organisation is undergoing and how it's bringing positive change across public Ireland. So again, we're looking for events that are in person, online, or hybrid, and we would definitely encourage for you to reach out to other organizations. Reason being is it's great to kind of showcase what you're doing, but it's also to provide information to other organizations that may be starting their innovation journey or thinking about how they can approach a certain problem that a solution may be already developed by another organization. So again, as Jade said, there's an opportunity to network and to showcase. We're definitely hoping to launch the Public Service Innovation Fund during Innovation Week. This will be the 5th iteration of the fund. And again, the fund is a mechanism to promote innovation in terms of within your organization, in terms of identifying new ways to approach challenges and develop solutions, but also maybe to have the investment required to a project you may not be able to do throughout your own budgets at this time. So again, it's an opportunity to think innovatively and address a problem. Throughout Innovation Week, we'll also run a number of workshops on online webinars and in the areas of creative problem solving, effective communication, developing an innovative methodology, and service design. So again, this really ties in well to today's network event about how to approach innovation and how to look at it. And these are opportunities to develop skill sets or improve your own capacity in how you approach problems, and again come across innovative solutions and bringing people along on your journey. The next slide. So again, as my role this year is through the engagement and support, I may have sent a number of emails to yourselves through the Innovation Network, and to organisations that may not be on our network, giving them an opportunity to shape how they want to raise awareness of innovation and maybe host their own events. So again, I'm just going to press send in the chat box. This is our online application form if you want to consider running an event. However, if you are new to this and you don't know what to do, please reach out to innovation@pair.gov.ie and we can organise a meeting where we can talk about an idea of how you could run an event during that week. Okay, so again, it could be held internally to your own staff, or again, we would definitely encourage you to try and highlight some of your excellent work to people outside your organisation and maybe run an event either in person, online, or hybrid. So again, as I said, email innovation@pair.gov.ie, reach out to us, and we're here to support in any way we can in terms of how we can shape your aspect to Innovation Week. So that's it.
Brilliant. It's great. And like Chris said, we are available on innovation@pair.gov.ie. So if you want more information or you want to reach out and have a chat with Chris or any of the team, just send us an email and we'll get back to you to set up a call. Brilliant. Okay, so the next announcement then I have is I just want to remind you all of the public consultation on digital public services. So I'll stop sharing for a moment. You will find more information on the public consultation on our website. And I suppose it's an initiative that the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform are holding. So we're holding this consultation to understand the priorities with regard to digital services in Ireland. And examples of digital services can include things that we're all used to doing. So for example, applying for a passport, applying for a medical card, receiving some form of social welfare, renewing your driving license, paying tax. They're all examples of digital services that we would engage in. And as part of the consultation, I suppose we want to hear how you use and engage with public services, whether that's online, through a public office, using one of our paper forms, or maybe over the phone. So the outcomes of the consultation will seek to improve the development and delivery of digital public services with a view to creating world-leading digital government services for everyone to access. And it's important to note that by improving the digital service, this will also improve the offline experience for those who do not engage in digital services and ultimately provide a better and more valuable service for all. The consultation is open online until the end of September, and like I said, you'll find more information on ops.gov.ie. And while I know we have an audience of public servants with us today, I would encourage you to put your citizen hat on and contribute to the consultation as a citizen who engages with these services, whether that's online or offline. So now that we have all of our announcements out of the way, I'm delighted to hand you over to our guest speakers for today, who we're going to discuss social innovation and share some examples of initiatives that they are running and talk to us about how they measure and understand the impact of the work that they do. So Mario joins us from Rethink Ireland, where he is Impact Director, responsible for driving Rethink Ireland's impact, strategic partnerships and business intelligence. And Mario is joined by his colleague Rosie, who is Research Manager there. And then following Mario, we will be joined by Fiona and Tom from Innovate Communities. Fiona is CEO and co-founder of Innovate Communities, and Tom is Social Innovation Manager, who plays a central role in developing their approach to community-driven innovation. So today's session is aligned to priority one of the Making Innovation Real strategy, and that is citizen-centric innovation. So when we talk about citizen-centered innovation and user-centered innovation, we talk about putting our citizen as the user at the heart and the centre of everything that that we do. This includes talking to our citizens, understanding their needs and what they expect from the policies and the services that we develop and deliver. This ensures that our services are relevant and that they provide value to our citizens. So when it comes to citizen-centred services, another important aspect is ensuring that we have made an impact and that we have created value for our citizens and users. But how do we do that? So sometimes the policies or services we develop and deliver have tangible outcomes that we can quantify. However, there are also policies and services that perhaps include more intangible outcomes that might not be so easy to identify, measure, or even understand. So this is the case when we look at more complex social problems in society, such as health, education, and housing. So to help us understand how community and philanthropic organisations respond to these issues and then measure and understand the work that they undertake in more detail, we're joined by Mario, Fiona, Tom, and Rosie, Mario's colleague as well. So I'm going to hand over to Mario if he wants to start getting his presentation ready. So like I said, Mario is Impact Director with Rethink Ireland. He has over 18 years experience in providing strategic guidance to international projects and has a wide range of experience that include long-term monitoring and evaluating of EU-funded international development projects. He also has experience setting up social enterprise and driving change in innovation and communities. So Mario should be able to set up his presentation now, and then we'll hand over. Brilliant. It's great we can see that now, Mario. I think you're on mute.
No, sorry, I was not able to mute myself. Just give me 1 second.
You're okay.
Perfect.
You're okay.
Excellent. Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Jade. I would like just to start saying thank you so much, Jade and Chris, inviting us for this session. During this presentation with my colleague Rosie, we would like to talk with all of you about social innovation and impact. So just to start, I want to know who has heard about social innovation. I was going to ask you to raise your hand, but I cannot see you at the moment. But what I will ask you is, what comes to your mind when you hear about social innovation? It's two words: social, meaning people, meaning human, meaning collective, meaning common, meaning group, meaning universal, and innovation. Innovation meaning change, experimentation, vanguard, new ideas, creation, and risk. I think that the best way to illustrate that is through a clear example of a social innovation. Maybe some of you have already heard about it. FoodCloud, who identified a very clear societal and environmental challenge. Globally, there is a 33% of food that is wasted. And at the same time, there is an estimation about 821 million people do not have enough to eat. So they have created an innovative solution to address this societal and environmental challenge. How FoodCloud use a technology platform to redistribute for food waste from retailers to food charities that is needed. Since it was created in 2013, FoodCloud has redistributed over 140 million meals in Ireland and internationally, rescuing more than 48,000 tons of food from going to waste. This is what we mean about a social innovation that we are backing. Another example, very different, sailing into wellness. Again, they have identified a clear problem. Young people affected with substance abuse and poor mental health have restricted access to therapy and recovery supports, and they have developed a clear innovative solution. Sailing into Wellness combines the therapeutic value of sailing and the sea to help break down the barriers that poor mental health and addictions can create. Sailing into Wellness in 2021 was able to support 475 young adults through their evidence-based mental health programs. This is what we mean about social innovation. So at Rethink Ireland, we define social innovation as a successful delivery of new approaches to meet societal needs more effectively and sustainably than those currently available. Just as innovation is necessary for economic growth, we believe innovation is critical to societal and environmental progress. So let me talk a little bit about Rethink Ireland. Rethink Ireland, we are a venture philanthropy organization that supports Ireland's best social innovations with cash grants and business supports. How we do this? We do this together with our partners. We work closely with the Irish government. We are delighted to receive much funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development via the Dormant's accounts. But we are also receiving funding from other departments. Actually, we have been partnering with the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection and the Department of Children's Equality, Disability, Integration, and Youth. So together, we combine the support from the government with the support from the private sector, from philanthropy, from trusts, foundations, families, private philanthropies, who has all encouraged leaders who are aiming and passionate about social change. Together, we create what we call it partnership from impacts, merging public and private fundings, bringing this together with business support to support social innovations across Ireland. We work mainly in 5 areas. We work health, we work in education, we work in equality, we work in green transitions, and we work with social enterprises. So how we support social innovations? What is our venture philanthropy model? We support them providing cash grants and business supports, tailor-made business supports with a clear focus, supporting to increase their impact, their financial sustainability, and their organizational resilience. Since 2016, we are going to be 7 years old by the end of this year. We have been able to create an 85 million social innovation fund, issue 47 funds in these different areas, supporting 361 social innovations across Ireland, reaching more than 500,000 people across the Republic, and supporting 1,500 people into jobs. All our investments, all the social innovations that we are backing, are aligning to support the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in Ireland. But let me talk now a little bit about impact, the second part. So impact. At Rethink Ireland, we have defined what we call our impact management framework, a framework that has been developed based in international best practices that includes the definition of monitoring and evaluations tools to manage the progress toward our objectives, and with a clear objective to put impact at the center of everything that we do, capturing relevant data and robust impact data to support our decision-making process. But what do we mean with impact? At Rethink Ireland, we have defined impact at 3 levels. Our impact on the awardees, the organization, the social innovations that we support. So we create impact on our awardees via our capacity building programs and performance management. The impact of our awardees in the final beneficiaries, and we are just supporting our impacts to create their impact on the beneficiaries' lives and the environment. And finally, our impact on the ecosystem, that we are contributing to support the development of the different ecosystems that we're aiming to achieve. But I will hand over my colleague Rosie to illustrate this with some real cases and examples.
Sure, thank you, Mario. So I'll talk briefly about one of our fantastic social innovations, who's currently funded by us, who's called Bounce Back Recycling. Bounce Back Recycling is an environmental and social organization which employs members of the traveller community to help recycle and prevent mattresses from becoming waste. So they have a dual mission. They focus firstly on the circular economy, and their aim is to reduce the amount of mattresses that end up in landfill. But at the same time, they focus on being inclusive and in supporting members of the travelling community into employment as they face extra barriers. Next slide, please, Mario. So you can see on this slide some of the outcomes that Bounce Back Recycling have achieved. Bounce Back have diverted 13,000 mattresses from landfill when they first joined with us. Over the course of the years of our support, this number has risen to 60,000 in 2022. So you can see that has a clear impact on the environmental aspect of their mission. But at the same time, the social innovation have also scaled out to 12 counties, and they hope their aim is to expand to all 26 counties in the Republic of Ireland, bringing a much needed service of mattress removal to everyone who needs it. And so far, they've created 12 jobs for members of the traveller community. You can see a quote on the right, which I won't read out, but I just wanted to illustrate with Bounce Back the nature of impact for social innovations. So their mission can be purely social, it could be purely environmental, it could be economic, or it can be a blend of all to make a deeper impact. So I think Bounce Back are a fantastic example of an organization that's growing from strength to strength and scaling up to make their impact nationally across Ireland. That's where Rethink Ireland kick in to amplify their impact. We back them with cash. We also back them with non-financial, so consultancy support in order to deepen their impact, build their business models, and actually implement their strategic visions. Next slide, please, Mario. So while Bounce Back was a good example of level 2 of our impact, so our impact on the organizations and even the beneficiaries, in this case, the environment they support, the Fuse project is a good example of our impact in level 1, how we support the wider social innovation ecosystem to grow and flourish. So what is the Fuse project? The Fuse project is one of 6 projects happening simultaneously, funded by the European Commission in order to strengthen the social innovation sector across Europe by building or establishing national competency centres for social innovation. Next slide, please, Mario. Specifically here in Ireland, the National Competency Centre for Social Innovation is part of our national project, which we're doing with European partners across Bulgaria, Portugal, and Cyprus. The aim of this project is to support the development of a national competency centre here in Ireland. We're leading this international consortium, and we want to strengthen the social innovation system here in Ireland through building the competency centres, but also through learning from our European colleagues across the 4 countries in this consortium. So in the first half of this project, we've been working on research to identify and validate the needs through a mapping exercise of the social innovation ecosystem here in Ireland. And we're not just working with the organizations on the ground, but we're also bringing in academics, bringing in the voices from public sector and from civil society so that we have a range of voices heard within this project. And together we can establish the National Competency Centre for Ireland. Key to the success of this project will be raising awareness, building capacities and skills of these players that I just named. Ultimately, we want to develop a joint blueprint for a social innovation strategy which can support a national policy for social innovation here in Ireland. That is the bigger picture, but how can we actually get there? Through collaboration, through developing our National Competency Centre, and through keeping the conversations and impacts steered by all players in the sector through our steering group, which is a part of this Fuse project. Next slide there, Mario. So currently, we've established the Irish dimension of the Fuse project as CORA, which is our hub for social change. And we're hoping that this will grow up and scale out and be a platform and a centre for all actors within the social innovation ecosystem to come to learn from each other and to get guidance on how to spread their impact and scale. So I might leave it there and hand back to my colleague Mario.
Thank you so much, Rosie. When we were preparing this presentation, Jade was asking us, can we identify some key takeaways for the audience? So we wanted to share with you two of them. The first one is the power of public and private collaboration to catalyze social change, social impact. And a great example is different funds that we have been establishing in collaboration with the public and private sector. Some good examples was the Innovate Together Fund, 5 million funds supporting to address the COVID-19 issues, where we were supporting 71 social innovations across the country. Another great example has been the Children's and Youth Digital Solutions Fund, a fund that has been established together with the Department of Children's Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, supporting 9 social innovations that are working with children and young people through the use of technology. On the Startup Funds for Social Enterprises, who was created recently with the RCD. Finally, as a second takeaway for you, is about impact management, the power of embedding a learning culture. So when we talk about impact, we can talk about impact measurement that is focusing into proof, or we can talk about impact management that the focus is in to improve. How we use impact data to constantly improve the services that we are providing to the final beneficiaries. And I will leave it there and give it back to you, Jade. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for that, Mario. I'm just going to make myself the presenter again. Brilliant. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Mario and Rosie. That was really interesting. And it was great to hear about the two projects that you mentioned, Bounce Back, and then also the Fuse project. And we might come back to those later on at the end of the Q&A session. And I really liked your last slide there and your kind of takeaways, and particularly the emphasis on collaboration and the power of collaboration and the importance of collaboration. And I suppose that's a focus of an awful lot of the work we do. And my colleague Chris, who's on the call, would do a lot of work with other funds and projects. And Chris also stresses the importance and the benefits of collaboration. And Chris might chat a little bit more about that in the Q&A session later. And I suppose the importance of collaborating within the system, but also outside of the system with the wider ecosystem and other stakeholders. So really, really interesting. And yeah, we'll come back to yourself and Rosie in the Q&A session, and we'll dig a little bit deeper then in some of the areas that you discussed. So I am now going to hand over to Fiona and Tom from Innovate Communities. And before I share the slide deck, I'll just briefly introduce Fiona and Tom, and they can take it away then. So Fiona is co-founder and CEO of Innovate Communities. Fiona was previously the CEO of a local development company in Ballymun, which she reinvented to become Innovate Communities, which has built an infrastructure that puts people in the community first. So Innovate Communities works with citizens, government, business and academia to address key social, economic and environmental issues. They do this by supporting communities to implement their ideas for change and improve the social infrastructure to enhance economic opportunities and social well-being in their area. Through inclusive and creative engagement, Innovate Community seeks to get to the heart of real issues by pulling together the wider ecosystem. Fiona is joined by her colleague Tom, who is Social Innovation Manager at Innovate Communities, and Tom plays a central role in developing the Innovate Communities approach to community-driven innovation. So prior to joining Innovate Communities, Tom was an independent researcher and consultant in the area of institutional change, with a particular interest in the link between individual growth and social innovation. Tom holds a PhD in the field of organizational change. And as Social Innovation Manager, Tom deploys his knowledge and experience in a way that supports individuals and groups to develop creative solutions to the complex issues they face. So we're really excited to hear from Fiona and Tom, and I'm just going to share their slides now, so just give me 1 second. Okay, and Chris might give me the thumbs up when the slide deck is available.
So while you're doing that, Jade,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for the wonderful introduction. Sounds very grand, actually, when you're listening back. And thank you to both Mario and Rosie for the extremely insightful presentation. So thank you for that. So as Jade outlined, it's myself and Tom that will be delivering our presentation today. We're delighted to share with you our work. Jade is popping that onto the screen.
Can you see that now? Yeah.
Can. Thank you so
Perfect.
much. So to put it bluntly, we all have a problem. Humanity is really at a crossroads. And to be honest, the path we choose now will determine the world that future generations will inherit. Sounds pretty grim, doesn't it? But it really is what we're facing. So the ways of thinking and working and living that have shaped modern life and modern business have brought benefits to us all. And I'm sure we know what type of benefits they are. But they've also created emergencies, climate emergency. We've devastated natural systems, and we have entrenched vast inequalities between people that increasingly divide and limit us. And it's really clear that sustainability efforts to date are not delivering the rate and scale of progress that we all need. And I'm sure everyone on the call is completely familiar with that. Next slide, please, Jade. So today, there is a general recognition that dealing with such civic complexities will require, as Mario has stated and Rosie has stated, a collaborative but also an agile approach to facilitate the creation of what we're calling innovative solutions to the somewhat wicked and entrenched social and economic environmental challenges we're all dealing with. And complexities, as Jade actually said at the start, are embedded in most of our systems, such as health, education, transport. And these systems have many facets: policies, practices, power dynamics that we deal with and battle with on a daily basis in our workplaces, social norms and mindsets that all form a system. And many of these have characteristics that are so difficult to understand and predict and control, which is really why systems change or trying to reduce or solve the issues that we're all facing can be so difficult and really frustrating. But system change is so important as a process because it allows us to look at addressing the causes of these issues and not just the symptoms, really facilitating us to, I suppose, think differently and act collectively, as Rosie mentioned in her slides. And it is really critical as a process if we're actually going to start to tackle some of these issues. Next slide, please, Jade. So as Jade had introduced us, we're Innovate Communities, and we're a social enterprise that is actually looking at how we can change systems and solve issues in our communities. And we do this by working to inspire communities of solvers, sometimes from different backgrounds, as we've already talked about today, to come together to build their capacity to implement their ideas for positive social change. And really, we support these people to think differently and think differently about the challenges faced, to enable them to carry out actions that will have meaningful impact in their communities. And I'll talk a bit more about that type of impact as we move forward. So just to give you a bit of background, I was really driven to set up Innovate Communities back in 2015. And I suppose it was a burning interest and desire to use social innovation as a process to explore emergent solutions, so unpredictable social problems. And in our company, much of our work over the last 7 years has been using tools such as design thinking to co-design new services, new products, and new businesses with and for challenged communities. And as we engaged and delivered in communities ourselves on the ground, we actually learned what worked and what didn't, and started to integrate an adaptive model of service delivery into our operations so that we're not bound by one specific way of doing, but using tools and methods to meet the community where they were at. And I know Tom might talk a bit about that in his part of the presentation. So COVID hit, and it gave us something in Innovate communities. It gave us a gift of time. It was really positive because it was an opportunity for us as an organisation to reflect. And I know we've all done a lot of reflection over the last few years. And we assessed our strategic and operational approach of the previous 5 years, and we knew we had delivered impactful work through launching what we have as a social innovation hub, so a community living lab and test space that was supported by Enterprise Ireland and Dublin City Council. And yes, we designed award-winning mentor programs for challenge youth, supported by Rethink and American multinationals. And we also supported youth with future skills development, all focused on delivering impactful, positive change for people and society. But during this review period, we realized something that was really important, and really important if we wanted to look at actually delivering system change and system thinking in Ireland. We were only treating the symptoms of these issues that we were facing and dealing with in communities, and we weren't actually getting to the root causes. But due to the agile culture we had built up, we were actually really fortunate because we could pivot and then begin a learning journey to understand how we as an organization could change the way we think and the way we see community issues, and view issues in community through a systems lens, to understand the people, the organizations, the businesses who are all part of the system, understand behavior and their patterns, to essentially, as I said before, focus on building the capacity of people to drive positive change and collective impact, which Tom will talk about in their space, to reduce the issues faced. Next slide, please, Jade. So we're working with a number of organizations in this space, and as I said, our learning in the system space is unfolding, but it's unfolding with them as well. So just to give you a quick flavor of some of the work we do and who we work with. So Frontline Organizations, we work with these to engage, for example, in the drug space, to engage those who have recovered or recovering from alcohol and drugs abuse, engage their families and staff and other relevant stakeholders to work together to reimagine the future that they want and to improve the service delivery for stakeholders on the ground. We're working with government service branches where we're supporting them to collectively understand the complexities in their current workspace, and not unlike any other workspace really, and facilitate them to collectively identify what looks good in terms of their future. Universities, both here in Ireland and in Europe, as we all know, there's an issue around the lack of capacity in higher education programs to meet priority skill needs. So in this space, we're designing a human-centered participatory approach for master's students in architecture, urban planning, climate change, and sustainability courses to help them learn how they can actually put people first in communities at the center of designing solutions, whether, as I said, it's in the climate realm or spatial planning. And we're going into a test phase currently with University College Dublin next week to test this and see how this actually will look in an Irish context. And lastly, another area we're working with is government-funded bodies, such as the Western Development Commission. And we're working with them to devise a framework and tools to hopefully help community systems see and sense themselves and work towards creating practical outcomes to the challenges that they faced. And we really hope that this will be achieved through the formation of a digital platform for social innovation. Next slide, please, Jade. So, just briefly again, I want to take you on a quick journey of why this approach is so important to us and should be important to you in your work as well. You know, our approach is not a panacea to solve complex problems, can't claim that, but it's just one way, and it's one way of working to progress certain tools of ways of working with communities that could be developed directly with people with a lived experience of a problem through meaningful participation from the bottom up. Next slide, please, Jade. So we all know what our typical contemporary problems are, and I'm sure most of us listen to, maybe or maybe not, Shane Coleman and Ciara Kelly on News Talk in the morning. We hear the fuel costs are rising emissions, cost of living, student accommodation issues, and also the entrenched and wicked problems that we've been facing for decades: poverty, food, shelter, mental health, educational disadvantage, the list goes on. And most of these problems don't actually have a single cause or solution, and many are actually interrelated. So as we know, these problems have simply occurred not really due to not meeting the needs of the people in our society like you and I. If we take a situation that we're all aware of, which is climate change, we all know that the world is still not on track to limit the temperature rise to around about 2 degrees. So how many times have we heard this? Every day you hear this in the news. However, we as society actually have, and I had to look this up to make sure this is right, we have the technological solutions, such as renewable energy and other environmentally friendly innovations. And these are continuing to advance, and we have these to actually work towards reducing this temperature rise. But to be honest, those countries and regions who have decided to act quickly and make a difference in this space have shared ideas. They should counsel across borders of countries, not to mention business opportunities. And they changed their way of thinking. And they looked at the problem from different perspectives of others and collaborated across sectors. Most importantly, they worked together to act. And I know you've heard this through Jade and Rethink Ireland, but cannot underestimate the importance of working together to act. And something I came across that the World Economic Forum said recently is when it comes to solving societal issues, many experts agree the problem is not technical, it's actually political and cultural. Next slide, please, Jade. So I suppose the bottom line is, if we continue to stay as is and continue to design and deliver on goals that are pretty much path dependent and have outcomes that are an impact that are already formulated, we rely on past experiences, the same people, the same decisions and actions, we're just going to repeat the same strategies and almost certainly get the same results. I mean, you all know that it's not something new, but if we're actually to have lasting change in our communities to solve the wicked and entrenched issues, we really need to be thinking differently and acting together on the issues that we're all facing. And I just want to put this to you, and not to obviously answer now, but to think about it. So what are you doing in your work to think differently and act together on the issues that you're facing? Or another way, and it's a phrase Tom uses and I love, what does good look like for you in this space? So before I hand over to Tom, for Innovate communities, what looks good for us is having a presence, a local presence, and engaging with people most affected by the issue, which is key for us to begin to understand issues in our communities, whether it's with frontline organizations, governments, universities, businesses, understand their internal systems and the external stakeholders that they involve with. So we really want to understand what is happening on the ground and what is the lived experience in order for us to think and act collectively in terms of the issues that these communities are facing. At Davos in 2022, it was stated that whether you empower people to participate either in decision making, delivery of solutions, or both, participation has proven to be a highly effective way to drive system change. So now I'm going to hand over to Tom Doyle, who is going to share how we do this in practice through talking about our tools and techniques we are testing. And I want to emphasize testing to help people change the way they think and therefore change the way they see. Next slide, please, Jade.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Can everybody hear me? Just, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Tools and techniques. Now, I could spend 10 hours talking about the various tools and techniques that are used to help us see things differently. Now, there are all kinds of tools and techniques that some of you involved in innovation projects may be using: design thinking, appreciative inquiry, future search, open space technology. Most of us involved in the innovation business are familiar with these techniques. But I just want to say that the common objective of all of these techniques is to change the narrative or story of what is present and what's possible. And that, you know, no matter what the technique is, ultimately it is about changing the language that we use to describe a present situation, and new language that we can use to describe what's possible in the future. Next slide, please. And in our sort of work, there's two approaches that I want to focus on. One is where you are facing into a particular change episode or transition that you have to make, a reorganization, say in a government department, or a introduction of digital technology or whatever it might be. And in that case, what you have to do is get people to talk about this change situation and to develop a common language around it, and a language that's positive and a language that is possibility focused rather than problem focused. Now, to give you a hard example, in our case, one of the programs that we run are for people facing into retirement, and we ran this program called Facing Into Change. How do you deal with retirement in a way that will enable you to engage more actively in the community? And we used all kinds of techniques, mainly based on the kind of concept of future search, where we got people to look at their past, the present, and what's possible in the future. But basically, what people do in the third phase of their lives depends to a large extent on the strengths and beliefs that they build up in their earlier life. Another work that I do with organizations uses a thing called the Cape Cod Model, where essentially you allow people to talk about a particular situation, you pause the conversation, summarize the conversation in terms of what themes are being well developed and maybe other things that are not being mentioned in the conversation. I'm just giving people that feedback, allowing people to know what they're talking about and how they're talking about it, and now allows people to pause and reset and rethink about the issue. Again, I'm just giving you a sort of a very brief sort of description of that. There is another type of dialogic kind of approach or tools, and that's really where you don't know the change or specific change that you want to make, but largely what you're doing is you're using techniques that bring people into much deeper contact with what's going on at the moment, and much deeper contact into the relationships that exist in a particular situation. And one of those techniques is called social presencing theatre, which we developed when we were the part of the ULab program run by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And we're using this with a group in Ballymun called STAR, who help work with people with addictions and work with people supporting people with addictions. And essentially what you're doing is you're using drama and theatre to help people literally enact out what their experience is of the present situation. And by doing this, and by witnessing how other people enact the situation, people begin to see their situation differently. And one of the things that emerged from that was the strong link between the regeneration process in Ballymun and the recovery process of individual addicts and the supports that are needed. And that group are now beginning to look at how the link between regeneration and how that can affect the recovery of people involved in addiction, and to make sort of recommendations to local authorities, etc., of how that can be managed better. Just gone back to the Facing Into Change one, one of the key things, that the language, the change of that, one of the key things that came out, people in retirement, what they said they wanted to be with people of like mind and working with people with common purpose. So these are examples of how different tools and techniques get people talking differently about their situation. Next slide, please. Now, these tools and techniques, the question is, can they be used, and this approach be used to, as Rosie talked about, to impact that at ecosystem level? In other words, this way of thinking about change at local level, which gets people to think differently about their situation and talk differently about it and start to act in different ways around these issues that we're facing in society. Can that be done now strategically across the country in different communities? And we think it can. Next slide. But it requires a certain approach. And the approach that we talk about is one of collective impact. And to achieve collective impact, to achieve a situation where you have all members of the community, all types of business and voluntary organizations and government and academic organizations rallying around a particular change issue. You need people who are focused, local sponsors, local champions who are focused on future possibilities and also have the capacity to engage with complex change. Essentially, that means living with not having the solution to start with, or maybe even living in the beginning with not knowing exactly to what success would look like, to be able to face into change in a way that to face into the unknown, and then by working with people in a certain way to come up with what those possibilities might be. You need diversity, you need business, you need communities, you need government involved. And you need to use a variety of the kind of tools that we're talking about. And a key point here, I would say, the tools are not the solution. They're just the means to the solution. And it's not about getting people to think or talk in a certain way. It's about people coming together and using these tools intelligently for their own purpose. And key to this is that whole point of, again, that Rosie mentioned about impact. From an early stage, the people decide what will good look like and how will we measure impact. What will this success look like and what will be the indicators of that success? And also, how will we collect this data? How will we measure how well we're doing? And lastly, in relation to this collective impact process that we are trying to advocate now at a community level, you need some steering or backbone group to guide this process. It doesn't have to be an organization like Innovate Communities or Rethink. It can be any organization at local level that takes on responsibility for steering the change, for collecting data, for feeding back, for coordinating that collective action. So generally speaking, the sort of takeaway I would give you in relation to our presentation, changing conversations is what change is all about. Measuring innovation is about data. Data is the raw material of social innovation. It's what points us to what needs to be done and how it can be done. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that, Tom and Fiona. You can hear me okay, yeah? Yeah, brilliant. So I really liked how you spoke about the importance of working together and, you know, the power of collaboration. And I think time and time again, every session we hold, whether it's a network session, whether it's a chat with somebody on the phone, whether it's a wider group of people, I think collaboration always comes back up time and time again, and how important it is. And I suppose collaboration really does empower and enable us to think and act differently. So I really liked that kind of emphasis. And Tom, you spoke a lot about changing the narrative, and I really liked what you said about focusing on possibilities rather than problems. Because I think we have a tendency to talk about problems, but in actual fact, we probably should be talking about the possibilities that exist instead. So I really like that kind of small way of already kind of changing the narrative and changing.
I just give Jade a second, see if she can jump back in.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Line
Right,
just
sorry.
temporarily dropped.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just going to start the Q&A session, but Chris might have my back if my line drops again. So thanks a lot. One of the first questions I want to ask is to Rethink Ireland and to Mario and Rosie, and I suppose that's about the difference between managing impact and measuring impact. So Mario or Rosie, would you like to take that question?
Sure. Yes, sure. Yeah. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I will say normally first we focus about measuring impact, and the main objectives is to prove the impact, to prove that you're having a positive impact through your innovation in that final beneficiaries. When we talk about impact management, it's go one level beyond that. is how we use impact data to improve your services, to improve how you improve the services, to improve the life of the people that you're trying to work with it. So that's what we are teaching, or we are trying to support our awardees. And to do that, we say we like to walk the talk at Rethink Ireland. And for us, it's really important that impact is at the center, and how we use impact data for the decision-making processes that we have internally. Okay, so it's not to prove, it's just to improve. And how we are embedding a learning culture. And I will say that's something as a society, I think is very important. How we can learn from failure. And when we're talking about innovation, innovation is intrinsic, a high level of risk. So there is a level of failure, but the important is like how we can learn from that so we can keep improving.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Mario. And that actually leads me nicely to another question that I'm going to put to Fiona and Tom, and Chris as well, because Chris is on the panel. So if Chris has any comments to make, he's more than welcome to jump in. And I suppose it's on failure, and it's on, we always kind of set our outcomes, and we know what we want to achieve, and we know the impact we want to make. But what happens when we don't meet those outcomes? And what happens when something else is the outcome of a program or initiative or a project? Fiona and Tom, do you want to speak to that a little bit about maybe other things that happen that are not planned?
Yeah, I can talk from my own experience actually, Jade. So I used to manage a local development company, and there was a decision not to take forward the funding for that organization. Failure was obviously one of the first things that came into the head of ourselves, and it's natural as humans to kind of think, oh my gosh, this is terrible in terms of what's happened. But when you fail, most of us, we're human. We want to succeed. We want to actually get back on and start to look at doing something different, and use what we've learned in that process of failure to exceed and to drive forward with something new. And that's what Innovate Communities became. Innovate Communities became that something new. As I said in the introduction, I had a burning desire to look at social innovation as a process, to do things better in communities by putting people at the center of designing services and projects and businesses. So in terms of failure, it's absolutely fine. I think we have to encourage it more, and wonderful things can happen out of failure in terms of creating greater impact in society and learning, as we're doing with Innovate Communities, into systems thinking and change, and the benefit for Ireland and other communities in this space to look at community development through systems thinking and change in a different way.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Chris, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now, if that's okay. And I suppose just with your role as Innovation Fund Manager, you're kind of managing a lot of innovation projects at the moment, or overseeing anyway a lot of projects that are happening across the public sector. And I guess, do you have any, I suppose, lessons that you've learned so far, or kind of tips and takeaways for public servants who are joining us today on, understanding what desired outcomes should be, and understanding what impact their projects are going to have?
Yeah, so I suppose from the outset, when again, I mentioned earlier on, when we're launching the fund, we do a number of communication pieces, or we're doing workshops and that kind of stuff. And what we try to do is we try to get potential applicants to consider, through their application, what the end goal is. Okay, so understand what the target is, and what is. So again, before, a lot of time they have to identify what the problem is as well. So again, we would say, well, that's the what of the journey. And then identifying the solution and how to approach it is the so what. So they're identifying that aspect, and they go, okay, I know what to do. And the what now is the likes of the future, what the end state's going to be, but what other additional measures will happen if the project goes in different avenues. So again, what are the supports I need to require to kind of sustain that. So that's the first one. But again, we do a lot of work through our application process to allow them to understand how to approach the project, and the project the project cycle. So again, that's the first one. So again, identifying that and being very clear and concise in how to define the project is also something that is required. I always tell them when they start their fund cycle that what you wrote in your application will not be what you finish up with it at the end of the fund cycle, because again, through the process, you know, they overcome challenges, they have obstacles, they have new opportunities, they identify new avenues maybe for different solutions they had considered when they were writing their proposal. So again, the way that the cycle pans out is quite good as well. Something in terms of obstacles and challenges and risk of failure. We've also embedded a culture of trust. So again, one aspect it required in any kind of funding mechanism is that they have the ability to feel that they can approach, say, the organization that's providing the funding, say, look, this isn't happening, I don't know what to do, is there any supports that you may provide? So providing that trust, because a lot of people will naturally try and fix the problem they come across, and you know, because they don't want that fear. They have that fear of kind of being acknowledged that they failed or they didn't achieve, and some people have that as part of themselves. But what we've done was we've identified mechanisms that of trust that allows them to reach out and say, look, I'm having a problem, because 9 times out of 10 we'll have a solution, or we have someone that's done something similar in the area, and we're able to connect them. So again, we've had that opportunity to identify challenge and obstacles, and a part of our reporting mechanism as well is we ask for that feedback. So again, people talk about that you know, embedding that kind of smart failure culture, a risk culture. It's an opportunity to kind of provide that information that we can then utilize going forward for future projects, that will say, well, these had this similar issue, and this is how they overcame it, or I'd like to put you in contact with them and they'll tell you their story. So again, how we talk about sharing successes but also sharing failures as well.
Brilliant.
What that kind of aspect as well. So from both organizations, what I loved was that they talked about the power of storytelling and sharing the good news, and sharing the failures, and sharing that information, because a lot of people will appreciate that when they're approaching innovative projects, or they're looking for innovative change, or as Tom mentioned, you know, changing a complete culture in terms of how we do business going forward, because a lot of time that's the biggest challenge is the cultural change. It's to support innovation, and we've seen that since I've joined. We've seen it since the formation of our public service and the innovation team. We've seen organizations really develop in their innovation maturity, because they've embedded that culture. They've embedded a mindset to encourage their employees or their staff or their organization as a whole to embrace innovation and slowly embrace failures as well. But it, again, it's something that I think everyone's starting to embed within their kind of thought process anyway.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I suppose Fiona has mentioned her experiences of failure, or not a project not meeting its intended outcomes and having to kind of pivot and change and develop into something else. And then Chris, you've obviously spoke about your experience in the fund with this. And I like what you mentioned about, you know, building that culture of trust, because yeah, we talk about a culture of innovation, we talk about a culture of failure or a culture of taking risk, but that culture of trust I think is really important. And I just want to ask Mario, because you mentioned briefly about your kind of accelerator program. It came up on one of your slides, your kind of package of supports that you provide for people. And I'm just wondering, you know, that culture of trust, that surely exists in Rethink Ireland and that accelerator program as well. And I guess there's kind of continuous feedback loops for people to be iterative in their projects and be agile. As Chris mentioned there at the outset, he tells people what's on your application form might not be what you end up with completely at the end. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that kind of culture in Rethink Ireland and in the programs that you support, to be iterative and agile and flexible.
I think it's a great question. Yes, I will say, that we try from the beginning, when we established that relationship with our awardees, with the social innovation organizations that we're supporting, to develop a very trustful relationship, because we feel like it's crucial for success. And when we mean success at the end, is we are trying to support these social innovations to maximize their impact and to scale. And to do that, the most important is to have a very transparent relationship from the beginning. So you were talking about our capacity building programs. I would say one initial key element is to have that kind of welcome session where we can assess what is important for you in your journey at this moment. What are these tailor-made capacity support that it will make a change in this next year to you? So we cannot apply something that is standard for everyone. We can customize it for you in order to maximize impact. And as you were saying, I think it's really important on a quarterly basis, every 6 months, to check where we are, what are the challenges. Is something that has been changed? Also, and I think through COVID, we all have been learning that context constantly change. So we cannot be static in a plan. You need to be flexible with the things that are happening and the external factors that you cannot control.
Brilliant. I think that's really important, and it's definitely something we've seen more so throughout the last 2 or 3 years, is that we have to be flexible and we have to be agile, and it's okay for things to change. You know, and it's okay for things not to be the way you probably set out, based on, you know, evidence and data, and kind of gathering that evidence and data and then using it to make decisions about changing outcomes or goals. So it's really great to hear that that kind of trust is there in Rethink Ireland and with the projects.
Just to share on that as well, Jade,
Yeah.
as part of the agreement we have with the projects that are successful through the fund, is we have a contract we set up through an MOA, and in that we list the objectives, the outcomes, and the impacts expected of their projects. And that's not just within year one, that's evaluating again in year after the post-fund cycle, in 3 years' time and 5 years' time, because a lot of these projects will take time to really start showing their impacts, to really start showing their evidence. They're not just quick wins. A lot of time they'll take a bit of longevity to capture that kind of data that shows the impacts, whether it be on say decreased cost, the automation of processes, the better improvement of an organization in terms of what they do in terms of their service delivery to the public. So again, there's also requirement to provide time for growth as well in these projects, and I'm sure Mario and Tom and Fiona would agree with that. A lot of these projects take time. They take time, and they take, you know, leadership to give that time as well, to let these things grow, because again, you may not. And what I would always aim high, especially for applicants when they're looking for funding, always aim high, but be kind of have those expectations kind of measured, because again, you may not receive return on value straight away once a solution is developed or incorporated. It does take time. So I hope that adds to that.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chris. I'm conscious of the time, and I just want to give Tom the last word, because
sorry, Jade. There is a question in the Q&A from Shane.
Oh, that's after coming in. Yeah, can you see that there, Chris? I can't.
Yeah, so Shane was asking, in some organizations, innovation could be just business as usual rather than in another organization. Do you have any recommendations on how to address the issue from your experiences? So again, I guess he's talking about terms of the development of an innovation culture in an organization, that it's not business as usual. So again, we have great success stories. I hope that's that's the question that you're asking there, Shane.
Yeah, and I suppose to say to Shane as well, if he wants to reach out to us on our email, we can follow up more specifically. And Chris, I'm sure you can provide examples of where kind of innovation is BAU, but also a specific culture in an organization. Sorry, is there any other questions there that have come in? Let me see. I'm going to finish up because I'm conscious of the time, and I can't see any other questions.
Sorry, what was Shane's question again there, please?
Sorry, so he's asking was, in some organizations, the concept of innovation is business as usual. So again, it's embedded rather than in other organizations. So again, he's asked for a recommendation on how to address this issue in terms of developing an innovation culture as business as usual within an organization that doesn't already have it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, to innovation is a part of the
as the culture, yeah.
Daily activity organization, is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
I think, yeah, very briefly, it is about having not thinking of change as episodic, not thinking of change as there's something comes from the top down that's done occasionally in relation to reaction to situations, that we accept that change is something that's part of our daily lives, as either as individuals or a community or as an organization, and that people think and talk about change in that way. And that's the and the only way of change and system change is that what you're talking about system changes, you're constantly changing the mindset organization in relation to what you're doing, and two, the power structures in the organization, who can make change happen. If it's on top down, basically change that's managed. If it's a change that where you have leadership dispersed in the organization, that's change as part of people's daily lives. I hope that gives Shane some insight as to what the difference is.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that, Tom. And I think you're right about change becoming kind of part of our daily lives and being comfortable with change and being accepting of change. And I would encourage Shane as well to visit our website, ops.gov.ie, because there's a lot of kind of resources and supports for public servants who are looking to embed an innovation culture within their BAU, I guess, in their organisations. But I did say, Tom, I was going to give you the last word. Now, you've kind of had the last word, but I'm going to give you another last word. Because I think you mentioned something on the call that a lot of people who joined us today would have heard for the first time, and that was social presencing theatre. And I guess I just want to ask you what you believe the future of social presencing theatre as a tool is in the public service. Is there a future for us as public servants to use that in our roles?
Well, public sector organisations that has already used it at the Technological University of Dublin. I know people who work in the organisational development unit there, and they've used social presencing theatre where people act out different scenarios of the organisation. They've used it to look at alternatives in terms of strategic plan. People actually physically enact out, if we went this route, what would that look like? If we stayed as we are, what would that look like? And people actually use their drama, use adopters and poses, and I'm told, yes, it works in terms of getting people, particularly people who may not be as articulate as others, who may be more introvert and maybe not be, how shall I say, be much more geared to expressing themselves physically rather than verbally. And yeah, it can work, and I suspect we'll see more of it, and that type of technique in big corporations in America. I can't see why it wouldn't be used in the right situation in the public sector in Ireland. So watch that space.
Watch that space, Chris. We might become actors in our day jobs.
Exactly.
Start acting out things. That's brilliant, Tom. Thanks a lot for that, and
Okay.
thank you to Mario and Fiona as well. And I know Rosie had to drop off, but that was a really interesting conversation that we just had there. And yeah, I'm excited to keep engaged with yourselves and to find out more about the projects that you're working on and the organisations that you're supporting. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Like I said, this is recorded, so people can watch back, and visit our website on ops.gov.ie for more information that we've spoke about on the call today. But I'll end it there. So thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next
Thanks,
month.
Shane. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.